Peter DePaul, 606 Undercliff Avenue. Good evening. My first concern is about the master plan and as it being rewritten. Putting more high-rise in, again, adds a very strong burden on the schools. Dozens and dozens of students more will come because of the increasing population. And at present, we're beginning to fill up what we just built. And we're also out of property. So there's a real rethinking of master plans. The overgrowth, the overdevelopment is beginning to come back and forcefully push itself into the school. The second part of the overdevelopment, though, would be, again, using the full width of the frontage of a house for the new potential residents for their apron or for the driveways. Maybe in the new master plan, there has to be a constriction so there's still some street parking to share among the neighbors. So I would be happy to consider that in the master plan. Third, I would be one considering to try, and I will ask Chief Skidmore, as he suggested it was a year ago, try Undercliff Avenue one way. If there is a difficulty in some circulation, then try it from North Street to Route 5. It's narrow. When you see large trucks, delivery, construction, fire trucks trying to get up and down that street, it's just mirror to mirror. And at times people smack each other's mirrors or doors of cars just to get by. So there is a circulation problem, there's a parking problem. I think there's also a health, a safety problem getting traffic through when you have larger vehicles and emergency vehicles. But it is a large consideration. But I wish it's been a year now since it's been first suggested. And I believe it was the chief, if you correct me, chief that brought this idea forward. And it is a thought among people in the neighborhood that would like to try it. But maybe as a compromise from North Street to Route 5 to try to alleviate some of the parking, have more width for emergency and traffic flow. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
Who was it that just spoke?
Peter DePaul.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Sir.
Hi, I'm Eric Heacock, 1354 River Road, Unit A. Just as a procedural matter, what happens to the comments and when you hear the public speak, what happens? Because I've heard you listen, respond in a couple of situations, but other times you just listen and move on. So just as a procedural matter, can you help me understand what happens?
Well, it's 5 minutes open to the public. You have 5 minutes to speak, and
Okay, but what happens to the comments that come that are
I
brought
can't
forth
answer
to
you
you?
tonight. We'll bring it back.
We'll try to answer you tonight.
Try to answer you tonight.
Okay, because I've just heard a couple of comments already about the master plan. I'm going to get more involved because I hear a lot of complaints. I'm on the boards and forums, and I read in the newspaper what's happening around town, and I don't have faith those are the right sources of information, and so I definitely want to get to the facts in all of this. But I'm a concerned neighbor. I was concerned that things that are happening with development and the failures that we've seen at Veterans Field are adversely affecting our property value, and they're adversely affecting the environment that my child is now living in. So I don't know where my comments will go from here. I don't know, but I'll start coming as much as I can. I work in the city, so it's very difficult for me to get here. But I feel like things are just sort of running rampant and out of control in Edgewater, and I think the Veterans Field is just a black mark on the city, and I don't even have a good egg date. I know that Mr. Borgia is thinking that things are getting cleaned up appropriately, and the contractor's taking full responsibility for that. But when is that park going to be finished? It's been, what, a year? It's a year, 18 months past due now. And I don't feel like you guys are giving us enough feedback and enough public official announcements about when that's going to get fixed, because I see nothing happening. I know there's legal process. I know that there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes, and contracts are being looked at, and we're trying to look at who has a bond and what have you. But none of that stuff comes from you guys. It's all from the public that we're seeing here. This 07020.com is not the place I want to go for my information. It's very interesting to read, but until it comes from you, yeah, I don't feel like it's worth really listening to. But I can promise you that I'm going to start listening a lot more, and I'm going to try to get involved, and I want to know how public process works in this town, because I don't like, especially with the development and the veterans field, I just think it's just been a disaster. And I want to know who's running the ship.
What's your name?
Eric Keecock.
Okay, Eric, first off, with the Veterans Field, it's delayed. When we found out as a borough that the field is recontaminated, we had a special meeting, and directly for the purpose of addressing the public and making everyone aware of what
That occurred, what, 4 months ago?
I don't think, was it?
No, immediately.
No, but when I'm sure it's going to get behind, but when was that discovered? It can't be, probably 4 months ago, right?
November 2nd.
Do we have this on the
When we got the
website?
letter.
It's not, tonight we have terms here. The two LSRPs met on Friday, and we're trying to fast track as soon as possible to move forward with a new remediation plan. We do have a recontaminated field, and you're 100% right. There's nothing going on down there, and there won't be until we have the approved plan. So
Okay,
this
so
is,
we're waiting on another agency to give us an approved plan of what needs to happen.
well, yes, that's part of it. The contractor hired his own LSRP, and the two LSRPs met to confirm the numbers, and they're moving forward. I'm pretty sure we have confirmation on both sides, and they're going to be presenting their action plan in the within 30 days, I believe? Less than 30 days. So now, tonight, we have terms here to discuss it on the conference, to talk about the field. As far as development, I respect your opinion, and this is the place to come if you have any questions.
You've had a couple of citizens ask you why things are being re-examined, and things are being opened up, and why are we going through this again? And I have no answer from you guys.
Well,
So I mean, I please respect that I haven't gotten all the facts yet, and I've got to do my own research. But I hear things like new high-rises. I mean, traffic's already bad enough. So are we just selling out to the biggest developer and trying to get as much development in here as possible? Because there's no public transportation to speak of that we're just going to help alleviate on these issues. And so where can I go get information about the master plan? Because I don't hear it coming from you guys.
Mayor, the master plan is a product of the planning board. It's not our responsibility under the law to adopt a master plan. That is a separate jurisdiction of the planning board. Two significant events occurred that prompted not only the governing body, but the planning board to take a look at that. One is a letter from the school board that indicated that our new school that we recently completed is at capacity. So we need to take a serious look at that. We also have information at the Hess site. I believe it's vacant, Greg. Is it vacant?
yes.
So that is a substantial.
On the west side of River Road?
Both.
Both sides?
Yes.
They have vacated that. Now that is a piece of property that requires careful consideration in whether or not that would be an appropriate location to help meet the demand for providing adequate school facility. I don't know. I mean, it's something that really has to be looked at. So those things have to be rolled into the master plan. The planning board does not appropriate money. The only board, or the only municipal entity that can appropriate funds is the governing body. So as they undertake these studies, they ask us to appropriate funds to pay for those events. So the mayor received a letter. I don't know, Greg, I don't know what's online and what's not online, but the mayor forwarded that to the planning board for their consideration, because that's how the land use law works. So we need them to initiate that. Mr. DePaul commented on high-rise, and that's going to bring more children. We've looked at that, and you can agree or disagree, but high-rise in the collective judgment of this community brings less children. Low-rise brings more children. It's just statistically the way it is. We have all that information. High-rise does not generate as many school-age children as traffic. Well, you can't blame Edgewater
Yeah,
for
like
traffic.
5,000
You have
citizens
Fort
in
Lee
traffic.
and you have North Bergen. And I understand it's a debatable issue, but if Edgewater stops, you're gonna be impacted by what's happening to the south of you and to the north of you. And if you're having, issues getting up and down River Road, they're gonna continue to exist. So it's not an easy decision. The governing body needs to weigh that as best they can, and they make a decision. But we have these conversations every meeting. A lot of the information is online, and I think the
We're
government.
kind of middle of the last approved master plan.
Is it online, Greg?
No, Borough Clerk's office has it. And in regards to Veterans Field, we created a Veterans Field webpage on our website, which essentially provides most of the documents from when the field was first closed to current. So all that stuff is available online. But the master plan you can get through the clerk's office.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Rocky. Anyone else wish to hear?
Mr. Bolger just explained to this gentleman that planning board initiates the re-examination. When was that done in 2013, before Ms. Gregory issued her report?
Mayor, I am not going to engage in a question and answer period with Ms. Krikovic. She has a lawsuit pending against the borough, and that is currently pending, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to engage in a dialogue. We do not do that. That gentleman that was just here, because it was his first meeting, I wanted him to understand how we do operate, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to enter into a dialogue. I think Ms. Krikovic can have her 5 minutes, and if it's appropriate to comment at the end of that 5 minutes, I will. But
This question has nothing to do with the lawsuit. This is a new re-examination.
I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay.
I'm
Mr. Mayor, can you answer
respectfully
my
going to
question?
I'm
decline.
not answering the question.
And you're on the planning board, correct? You sit on
You
the
can attend the
planning.
planning board and ask the chairman of the board.
I also wanted to point out that today's resolution refers to Catherine Gregory being authorized to prepare the master plan, which is of course being introduced after she already prepared the re-examination report. And it says here that it was presented in a proposal dated December 17, 2013. I wanted to point out to all of you that she billed for her work on the re-examination report November 6th, which is over a month before December 17th proposal that's referred in this resolution. She also refers to the email that she received on November 6th from somebody in the town. Mr. Mayor, could you tell me who that email was from, directing her to do the re-examination?
I don't know who gave her an email. It wasn't from me, so I.
It wasn't from you. Mr. Prince, could you tell me if the email was from you?
There were several emails which you requested through Oprah, which you will receive offhand. I don't recall, but you will get that information in due time.
Okay, no more questions.
Anyone
I
else?
have a question, a point of order, a point of procedure. Mr. Phil, does it make sense, is there any protocol for when people come up in public session? Does it make sense to ask them to identify whether in residents or non-residents, if they're here in professional capacity or as a paid lobbyist or proponent of one thing or another? Or is it just, they just have to say name and address and that's all we care about?
I don't think it's inappropriate to try to, understand what the basis of the inquiry is.
Because if I have to be making decisions and have evaluate, as we all do, I'd like to know what the balance is.
Right. No, I
Because
understand.
sometimes,
Yeah, right, somebody else has a.
I'm pretty sensitive to it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Dennis?
Dennis Gallagher, 18 on Terrace. I'm wondering if there's any way we could pursue a deal with these people who provide seems that as a result of the Bridgegate thing, I was watching television more than I used to, and there's something really good about having the television rather than just the way we do it in this town, which is you only find out things by accident most of the time. That's my experience anyway. There's no real distribution of news here except good news. You know, the stuff that is really kind of not really germane. It's just good news. You know? So I know there are a lot of having watched television for several days. It was amazing that there are at least 5 or 6 fairly close towns that are actually transmitting the entire session, and one of them was Fort Lee. There's a value to it, in my opinion. I think that I don't understand why we haven't been doing it all along. It's just a suggestion.
We have had recordings before, Dennis, and, we were never on a cable channel, but, I have no concerns with that. If the council wants to entertain it, we could take a look at it.
Yeah, but I'd appreciate it if you'd at least look into it, and if you decide not to, come back perhaps and tell us why not.
Okay.
I think more people watch YouTube than watch cable TV, so.
Anyone else wish to be heard?
Sorry,
You went already, right?
I missed the snide remark.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Sir?
Part of my 3 minutes, I came last minute. I'm Mark Vanessa. I live in the Moorings, 13 Moorings Lane. And this is the first borough meeting that I've come to, but I wanted to participate. I'm a new resident here. I've been here about 2 years. My wife and I moved from Rome, and we were in New Jersey, as part of northern New Jersey, trying to select a community that we thought was a nice place to raise our family. We have 2 small children. And I echo some of the comments of this gentleman that was here before. I don't know enough about Edgewater and the master plan, but what I would like to do is at least state my distaste for what's been going on with Veterans Field. So I have 2 small kids. We moved in the Moorings in early February 2012. We were good residents, tax-paying residents, and this will be the 3rd summer. So essentially, I have a couple of questions. One, when is it going to be fixed? Because every day when I drive past it, it's an eyesore. And I have seen the iterations. I know the work was started, then the hurricane came through, that interrupted the work, and then there was all kinds of issues, and then we have this last issue. But I think that it's unacceptable, completely unacceptable, that people with a young family would have to miss 3 summers of ball games, going for a ride on the slide or whatever, and not have any information. And the question that I have is, what is the recourse? What can you say to residents? Residents, we're going to refund some of your taxes because potentially, one of the reasons why we chose to move to Edgewater, was there a school, was there a pool, was there a park? And the park is a big thing for folks. We're cooped up during the winter. So I'm really interested to find out what is the recourse against the contractor or the contractors that have been involved, and what is happening. I have a lot of other comments about what's going on in Edgewater, but don't want to bore you too much with that.
Sorry. Mark, I have 2 kids too. My son hasn't played little Pee-wee baseball, anything on that field. I piggyback your comments as far as frustration with the field. Like I said, they tried to double him up with T-ball 2 years in a row. He's 8 years old now. It's T-ball's too much. I agree. I live right across the street. I'm a little further south on River Road. One of the greatest things I thought with that house was walking right across the street to the field. We haven't been able to do it either. As frustrated as anybody in the town. As far as, we have 2 LSRPs trying to hammer out a way to fix it, and a way to fix it as soon as possible. We haven't had a time frame presented to us on, everything still has to be approved by the state as far as our cleanup plan, and as far as giving you a time.
But, I understand too, but I would assume that using taxpayers' money to remedy the park and to restructure or whatever, however you want to define that, I think that during the months when the work was being done, before the work was halted, I saw the contractors working one day, half a day, and I go back and forth on River Road at least once or twice per day. And I'm keen because I'm hopeful to see, some progress. I mean, the sidewalk, I have a very small young son, and that's another issue with Edgewater. So all this development that's been going on, I think maybe the onus should be on some of the developers to improve the infrastructure that we have. So I have a small daughter that attends the elementary school, and every morning when the bus comes to stop, every single morning when the break, there's cars that pass the bus on the left and cars that pass the bus on the right. And the bus, and sometimes a police officer is there, and they stop the cars and do whatever. 9 times out of 10, because the police office organization here in Edgewater is so limited, they can't be everywhere all the time. So one of the issues with River Road is, apart from traffic, there's no contiguous sidewalks. It's a hodgepodge of what was here, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and trying to integrate that with new development that's been taking place. So I came to really make some comments about the park and just express my frustration along with some of the other residents. But like I say, there's 10 issues with the development of Edgewater and how that is going to be seen medium term and long term, especially for folks with young kids. And if you're pushing a little stroller along River Road, I cease to do that after a couple of times because you take your life in your hands and you take your kids' life in your hands, So anyways, I think I need to also participate with some of the hunting board meetings, so I can just at least listen in and see what's going on. But I too would also echo the sentiment of the gentleman. It would be great to get information, legitimate information, and living here in the borough of Edgewater, the residents, or at least this resident, looks to the borough and this building here as legitimacy. And so as such, I expect to have that information as opposed to hearsay.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else wish to be heard? Seeing none, I'll close the open portion of the meeting. We have Ron Dooney in for a conference. Ron, come on up. Terms Environmental.
Evening, everyone.
As you can see, ball fields are a hot topic, so how do we make out last week?
As Phil had indicated, and you indicated, we had a meeting that took a while because at our last public meeting, the contractor brought an LSRP and it was decided that, they questioned the validity of the laboratory results. And it was decided that we would engage an independent firm to validate, and that's a technical term, but basically to go through all of the laboratory data that was generated during the delineation of this problem, the PCB contaminated material that was brought to the field. And that validation was just completed. Most of those validation reports given last Friday. We were still receiving the last one on Wednesday of Friday prior. And we got the results, all the final results last Wednesday. So we met with Representative Waterside and their consultant, and town and Meglia and myself and Pete McCabe, my project manager, on Friday. Basically, the results indicate while some adjustments of some of the numbers had to be made, essentially it didn't change the volume of soil, or changed it very little. If we are to clean up to the residential standard, which is 0.2 parts per million. And that was the directive of the council to work toward validating the data, to make sure that everybody, both sides were in agreement that the data was to be used as is. And then based on that, to develop the plan to remediate the material that was brought in and mixed into or commingled by the way it was brought in. So essentially, we met. There was no contention that the data is in any way not validated at this point. So We are going to prepare the plan in accordance with what the council had asked, which is the remedial action work plan that will be necessary to remove that material down to the residential standard. There was some discussion about other alternatives, but that was what the council had asked us to do initially. With respect to the DEP, because that plays into it a little bit, and the EPA, I had conversations with Kevin Schick, myself, and a few other conversations with DEP. One person called me, I called a couple other people to get input to see what their position would be. But as the LSRP, for the most part, I have to decide what meets the regulatory requirements, but I can do that with technical guidance from them. And in some cases, I do need their prior approval. Kevin indicated that, as long as we were cleaning to that standard, the only thing that had to be done, that had been done, was to notify the DEP officially and to send in a confirmed discharge remediation related to that new discharge. It got incorporated into the existing case. That's basically the only correspondence that's happened with the DEP. Kevin also indicated that depending on the concentrations, we would have to involve the EPA. I haven't personally had the conversations, but Pete McCabe, my project manager, has been in communication with the EPA, and basically the only thing that they've indicated is when you prepare your work plan, depending on how the cleanup is proposed, they would either need to weigh in and approve it, or at least see it within for 30 days. They have 30 days to decide if they want to weigh in. So we, again, at the last meeting, were more or less, it was decided we were going to validate this data, and we can't submit the report until the data is validated. So the data is now validated. We're working on the report. I think it said maybe 30 days, but it'll be less. If we want to explore other options, it might take 30 days. But if that's the way to go, then we should have it by middle of next week. We'll have the plan to get it to the governing body, and you can, tell me that it's okay, or you want to go in a different direction, whatever. But once that's done, I can submit it to the EPA, and then, it's going to be on the contractor to implement the plan, or whoever is chosen to make sure that they're, have all the proper qualifications to, to truck things off the site and everything. So that was what happened at the last meeting. I think somebody said it was November or something. I think that's when we were done with our delineation, after we found out that there was material that came in that hadn't been tested, that ended up having some PCBs in it. We finished our delineation sometime maybe a week before that meeting, and then it was decided to go and validate this data so that there was no question that we were not putting a plan together that would remediate soil that didn't need to be remediated. The results indicate that the volume we were talking about is approximately the same.
In your experience, Ron, with you should have a plan to the council next week.
Yes.
If we submit it, how much time do you see them needing to confirm it? Up to 30 days?
The DEP has indicated if we're cleaning to point 2, they don't need to approve it. The EPA has 30 days to comment on it, and they could come back and ask for something else. But if we're remediating to that point 2 standard, the most stringent standard there is, the indications, conversations with the EPA would be they wouldn't need 30 days to comment on it. They would probably get back sooner and say, we don't have a problem, you're cleaning up to the most stringent standard in New Jersey. So they are required to be notified if anything's above 50, and if anything is being left, want to be left between 10 and 50 on the site, they would have to weigh in and give their actual approval. We couldn't do anything until then. But if we're going to clean it up to the low limits, we'll give it to them. They do have 30 days by law, but they've indicated that they would probably not need to take 30 days to respond to us, but that's the EPA. I mean, you know, we deal with the DEP over the years all the time, and now it's, as the LSRP, I'm representing the DEP, but the EPA, we only deal with on Superfund sites. So, you know, I can't speak to whether they'll follow through with what he's telling us. I mean, they take them 30 days. Well, if they don't, the maximum is 30 days. If they don't respond, then we're gonna clean up to that limit. If, you know, that's the most it can take because they don't have the right to take any longer. We'll just move forward if they don't respond in 30 days.
Mr. Mayor, question?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Hold on, Michael, go ahead.
Ron, your plan that you're gonna get to us next week is getting rid of everything. Is complete removal.
That's what we're gonna do.
Which is what the contract calls. So, we have a meeting on the 15th, the regular meeting, the 18th, so that's gonna be plenty of time for us to see that. Now, I know there's a period of 30 days that they can come back and comment on it, but if you're presenting a plan that's basically making it pristine again, then they shouldn't comment, and if they do, we can certainly deal with that. So my question is, can we guys, the gentlemen, you know, look to the 18th as when we're gonna basically ratify what he has and ask the developer to either, you know, agree with it or not agree with it, so we know where we stand. And then B, and this is a separate question, is there a process where, not to add more time to it, as a parallel process, to ask the DEP or the EPA to give us their, in other words, proactively say, even if there's a fee involved, we want you to rubber stamp this because we don't, not that we don't trust you, and just for the public to understand it, the government basically certifies that companies like terms to basically contract their supervision of the process. Is that, in simple terms, the way to say it?
Yes.
So, with that said, since that process has only been in place for a number of years, and again, not questioning your company's integrity, but for the security of everybody, at some point, simultaneous to the process, not to delay it anymore, and not to add a whole lot more money, but I feel more comfortable if there is a process to say, you know, you're allowed to comment if you want, but we wish you would, because we really want you to tell us this is the right thing to do, and that we're on track, because we've all waited too long, and we might as well get it right now. In fact, we have to get it right, there's no question.
Twofold answer. DEP basically would say, we don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Now, that said, is it possible to get them to weigh in? Maybe. I mean, if, you know, there's a governing body, you ask somebody, but that's almost a guarantee. If we're cleaning it using the standard, the lowest standard, and in accordance with all applicable regulations and rules, which is what the plan will say,
Which is what the contract requires.
there's nothing they could do to say, well, I don't know why you would do something different.
So we should look to the 18th and to ratify what you have submitted and
You know, and,
it's a hard day to move forward.
there's, again, I've spoken to a couple different people. Kevin is the person, Kevin Schick, who is the PCB liaison for LSRPs. I've spoken to him a couple times. And more or less, he said, you know, you reported it, you put in your confirmed discharge, you do it in accordance with the regulations, we don't need to be involved.
Ron, next question. Waterford Construction has basically, Waterford Construction, LSRP Penn Jersey, has basically ratified that your findings, the third-party findings, that they're in agreement with what the findings are, correct?
When we met on Friday, there was no questions, no discussion as to the validity of the data.
Thank you.
And then, other answer, EPA, the second part. The EPA could certainly weigh in and give you a letter within that 30 days.
If they didn't like it.
Period.
If they're gonna back.
Well, if they like it, they might weigh in as well. They don't have
That's
to.
what they like it to send us a letter, because we don't,
We could try, I mean, you know, they may say, you know, if we're okay with it, our policy is just to not comment on it, because if we're not okay, we'll comment. But we'll ask them. I mean, I certainly, honestly, that's fine with me. Get the EPA, the DEP to give a letter saying, you know, Ron Dooney is doing exactly what we would have done and what we want to do.
I'm very comfortable with what you've been doing, Ron, in terms, because basically you uncovered it, you reported it, you tested it, it was third party confirmed that your amounts and quantities were validated, so you're right on track.
Mayor, Matt, Mr. Dooney, on the last paragraph of your letter dated January 25th, 2014, you also indicate that during your meeting with the contractor, they had asked you, and I guess indirectly they will ask the governing body to consider an alternative.
They brought up a possible alternative.
Right.
And asked, would we work with their LSRP to develop a plan toward that? And we said we can do that if that is what the governing body wants us to
Do
do.
you want to comment on what that includes?
It was essentially to leave the maximum concentration of PCBs, which would be up to 10 parts per million, and include them under a cap, whether that be a different type of cap or clean fill, and leave that and put them in the deed notice along with the other PAH compounds that have always been part of the contamination that's being capped here. That's what they suggested or threw out as a alternate scenario.
Is this an acceptable means by the state?
The state regulations would allow you to leave up to 10 as long as it's capped properly and put in the deed
So it
notice.
would be legally and safe.
Yes, as long as it's capped properly, it would be allowed on sites. But, that's not what we were moving forward toward, but that was what was thrown out there and discussed.
And that would require a separate contract, a new contract, correct?
There are some contractual issues that the borough attorney needs to review with both scopes of work.
My intention, and I believe it's the intention of this council, is to execute the original contract and to make sure that the field is cleaned up to the standard we were going for originally. So
Where were we originally?
We were delineating to the most stringent standard, the residential standard of 0.2 parts per million, and that is what we were assuming we were doing all along. This last 2 and some odd months has been the delay, if you will, is the independent company had to validate this data. And unfortunately, PCBs is particularly labor intensive to validate properly. That's usually done on Superfund sites and other large contentious type of sites where there's a lot of responsible parties involved, and they all want to make sure that they know the data has been, quote, validated. So
I have a question, whenever you get a chance, I have a question for you.
Okay?
were you finished?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay, and I'm sorry, the question may have already been answered, but it's very difficult for me to make sense of what's being said through the speaker in the intercom, and so I apologize if the question has been answered. What I'd like to find out is, have the results, the final validation results, have they been shared with the contractor and the LSRP?
Absolutely.
Okay, they've been discussed, they've been reviewed, and has there been any opposition or contradiction from their side?
Not at the meeting on Friday. We met, confirmed, Greg and myself both confirmed that they have everything that we provided. They know that they have everything. They're not looking for anything else at this point. And there was no discussion whatsoever that these validated results are still in question. So therefore, I take it as they have definitely accepted that.
Okay,
Is that it, Lou?
yeah, that was it.
Okay.
So, Mayor, if I may, just to elaborate on this discussion we had Friday, because we did touch on several components of this. There was discussion on the civil engineering side handled by Neglia. Once we get to the top dressing, now the original scope of work, the contracted work called for natural grass material as the final lift product. However, with the new DEP regs and standards now, there seems to be an issue with topsoil in general. And, you know, we had this discussion with, you know, I want to replenish my garden at home and get a pickup truckload of topsoil. And the likelihood of those soils testing high for those compounds that are now deemed ineligible for these types of projects from the DEP. So it just, you know, it's a lot of material, and we had that discussion because it's a legitimate discussion to have.
Well, I can elaborate a little bit on that. This has come up, it's in the contract that all material brought to the site be certified clean material, including the topsoil. And in New Jersey, you can move topsoil all over the state and never have to test it, but when you're coming from or going to a site that is part of the site remediation program at the DEP, which is what we are once we've identified contamination at this site, then all material coming here has to be certified clean. It is very difficult to find clean topsoil. It just has, usually has some pesticides in it, some arsenic. You go to any topsoil place, you test it, you may or may not get clean material. So that's come up. We made a point of that before Sandy, that, you know, that should be something the contractor identifies so that we don't get to the point where we're ready to put topsoil unseeded and you can't find the clean stuff. So that was something that was discussed a while ago. It's probably going to come up when you get to that point. Just that was the discussion that was brought up to say we still don't know how we're going to satisfy that because it's hard to come by in this state, because you can't just go to a quarry and get clean sand, which is one way to get clean fill, but when you need topsoil, it has to have all these organics in it. Almost, not all cases, but a lot of cases, it has contaminants in it. I mean, you might test it, you know, from any garden center, and you could find material above the DEP standards, but you wouldn't be required to test it, but here you are, because it's coming to a site that there's supposed to be a clean fill cap, and that includes the topsoil.
Question. It was my understanding that the conversation of artificial turf came up as a way of moving this thing forward quicker and getting kids onto the field. And I'm hearing now that maybe it's a capping device under this plan B. Let me just finish my point. With your discussion right now with topsoil, that question of the final layer, grass versus artificial, is independent of that, because we have to bring topsoil up to that artificial or the grass. So he still has to have that filled clean in either case.
Yeah, I mean, that was partly an engineering, but the question about needing to have the topsoil tested and whether or not we can find that they can find the topsoil came up because, yes, they were talking about artificial turf. And as far as the engineering part of that, that's where I can't weigh in.
But there's no level of requirement, there's no deterioration requirements because you have artificial turf. You have to have the same thing, right? Same topsoil, up to the grass or artificial turf, right?
Well, my understanding on the engineering side of the discussion there was that if they went for some other artificial turf, they wouldn't need either all of the topsoil or most of it.
My understanding was on the topsoil, the artificial turf was a way of speeding along, and that's why I was willing to consider it. But if we're talking about it as a masking device, it doesn't make sense. And especially if we're going to still talk about another year out of service anyway.
If you need topsoil, all I can say from the LSRP environmental perspective, if you need topsoil, even if you're going to put some other artificial surface on, whatever amount of topsoil you need is going to have to be cleaned and tested and certified. And if that decreases the amount of topsoil by some percentage,
yeah, well, we're going to make a bunch of
I don't know what percentage it would decrease, but I do know that that will come up. And I think
wasn't that always
also
the
brought up
point? Do we always need clean topsoil from the beginning? What's the issue here?
Yes, and it was discussed before Sandy. That's why I brought it up. Is before Sandy, we were looking forward in more ways than one to finishing the project, and that was the last thing you were going to need to do was topsoil. So we were saying, have you found the source that you could get certified clean topsoil from? And there was discussion about going to, sludge plants to mix sand and sludge, and I think there was some testing done by the contractor. But it was brought up because it is a hard material to
Is there
find.
pristine reserves in Pennsylvania where you can just bring dump trucks in at some cost? I mean, it has to be.
There's somewhere where you can find it, whether it's at all cost effective or whether you can get enough of it. You know, it's always, you can always find something, but, you know, where it is and how much it takes to get it here is always part of the issue. But the point was, though, it was a delay issue that was being brought up there, as if I can't find it, that's gonna delay this project even further. That's all, you know, again, my perspective is, contract calls for it, I'm just telling you it has to be certified clean. If you're gonna bring topsoil in, if you wanna change the plan and not bring it in, then that eliminates one testing requirement. So, that's all.
Any further questions?
Look forward to the report, look forward to it quickly, and we look forward to talking about it on the 18th.
And just the timeline again, once everything's agreed upon and we are gonna go forward with it?
Once, you mean as far as implementing?
Implementing,
That's a question that is gonna be means and methods, kind of.
available materials.
Well, available, first you have to get, I mean, what I think, you know, has been discussed in these meetings, both publicly and in the meetings we're having to discuss where do we go from here, is the fact that you've got to clean it up first, and then we get back to where we were before this happened, and now you've got to find clean material again.
In your opinion, to get back to where we were, once it gets approved, is it a 4, 8 week? I think you said something.
Couple of months, I would think.
We could be back to that point.
Right.
And that could be 30 days from now.
And of course, you know, I mean,
And then-
logistics like weather delays and, you
Right,
know, things
right.
like that. But yes, I think from a practical standpoint, if tomorrow everybody was in agreement and we said, get going, I would think it would be a 2-month process to get all of this, get all of the material back off the site, and then how long it takes to get to the point of topsoil and finishing, you know, that's something that,
Well, it's a contractor needs to.
I know the original estimates were, you know, were not, you know, I mean, I guess it just didn't turn out that way, and then Sandy did, but, yeah, I can't say how long it would take them, because we, you know, I don't know what their schedules would be and whatnot, but if you just hired somebody or had them, whoever, come in and clean this material up, 2 months would be probably more than sufficient.
Any further questions?
John, sorry, I apologize, and that process is certified trucks and landfills removal, that those trucks come from a separate company that roll through the town, pick it up, come out.
They have to
That's
be
all part of your
properly
plan.
licensed by.
That's all part of your plan, you present to us as the way it gets removed, and that's not,
Yes.
that's not a local contractor bringing it out back again, okay?
All the trucks have to be properly licensed to haul the material to facilities that are properly licensed to receive it, and depending on the concentrations, that could vary as to where it can go and what can carry it.
And we're talking major truckloads here. The barge system would not be a viable option here?
Unfortunately, where it's going and everything, it won't be.
Less, more or less.
Yeah, we've looked at some of these things that we're not discussing, other options, and just so you've heard, I mean, there's other options, but they're gonna take forever, and they might not save any money, I mean, to do on other sites. If you had all the time and said, just do whatever you can to keep the cost down completely, you might go a different way and treat it on the site or something, but right now, that would delay it even further.
We're all good, guys? Ron, thanks for coming in. Nice job, Ron. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
This time, moving forward, I ask for approval of minutes for the October 7th, 2013 meeting,
So moved.
and the sign die reorganization meeting of January 3rd, 2014.
So,
Can I have a second?
second. Roll call.
Councilman Henry?
Yes.
Councilman Doran?
Yes.
Councilman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Bedell?
Yes.
Councilman Bartholomew?
Yes.
Receipt of bids.
We received streetscape of Old River Road, see resolution 2014-32, which is authorizing the approval plan design for phase two.
So, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Adoption of public hearings or ordinances? With none. Communications petitions.
Yes, Mayor, we received a letter from Mr. Weschler. Basically, the summary is his opposition to the idea of converting the north end of Underwood Avenue to a southbound only one-way street. He feels it would require residents traveling down Route 5 to continue down the hill to the right to turn left on River Road until they can make a left onto North Park or Orchard. Other residents traveling north to the GW Bridge would be more time consuming, but potentially more dangerous for them. He believes the present restriction on using the Orchard between 7:30 and 8:45 a.m. when all are arriving to GW school seems to be a sensible public safety response. He just requests a fair balance, between the two. And also received a letter from the PBA, Local 45, to have the opportunity to meet with the governing body to discuss the renewal of the collective bargaining unit contract. That's it, Mayor.
Introduction of ordinances, we have none. Councilman Henwood.
Yeah, just real quick, Tom, Quinton, the guys, DPW, the whole crew, outstanding job in every regard. The mayor's been with them. Vinny's just got done being liaison. He's ridden with them, and